President Biden heads to Michigan today to tour a Pfizer facility manufacturing coronavirus vaccines. In the U.S., more than 41 million have received at least one dose of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, and 16 million are now fully vaccinated. And at the virtual G7 event with world leaders today, President Biden plans to announce the U.S. will contribute $4 billion to help get COVID-19 vaccines to the world's poorest countries. So, with more on this, let's bring in Dr. Bob Lahita. He's a professor of medicine at New York Medical College and the chairman of medicine at St. Joseph University Hospital. Thank you for joining us again, Doctor. So, how will the U.S. contribution to COVAX, which is the kind of international program, help in the global fight to stop this pandemic?
Well, Anne-Marie, this is wonderful news because the World Health Organization, as you know, does many, many good things around the world for all sorts of epidemics, and now the pandemic. And there are 130 countries, believe it or not, that do not have this vaccine, that have never seen the vaccine. So this $4 billion donation from the USA to this group of European countries and other wealthier countries will be a big deal for people in small third world nations who are suffering really, really unequally because of this terrible pandemic.
So, Dr. Bob, Pfizer has launched the first COVID-19 vaccine trial for pregnant women. They say the first volunteers have already received shots in the study. How important is the inclusion of pregnant women in these vaccine trials?
Well, you know, Vlad, we talked about this last week. It is extremely important that pregnant women get vaccinated. Now, we're going to make it official with the Pfizer research on 4,000 pregnant women. So it'll be codified as, yes, it's good, or no, it's not that good. But from our experience, if you get the disease and you're pregnant, you run the risk of really doing poorly, both for your fetus, yourself, and you could actually die with your pregnant fetus on board. And this is a big issue. This is a big issue for everybody because there are so many women out there who are a little bit skittish and afraid to get immunized because they're expecting. So from the beginning of the announcement of the pregnancy to term, you should get vaccinated.
So, doctor, are the trials different for pregnant women?
No, they're not going to be that different for pregnant women. I mean, really, what we're going to do is follow all of the antibody development and the cellular responses, which are different in pregnant women. There are different serologies, that means the proteins in the blood. There are different cell populations that a pregnant woman has. All of that can predispose to very severe disease if they get infected. The vaccine will protect them from severe infection and allow them to carry the baby to term.
So, Dr. Bob, the ongoing emergency in Texas has put the spotlight on what it's like for states to deal with a disaster in the midst of a pandemic. We're already looking to the upcoming wildfire and hurricane season. What can vulnerable states learn from this issue in Texas?
Well, Texas is in a bad spot right now. As you know, their grid is their grid, and that is one of the problems. Their power grid went down, significant cold, freezing temperatures, people without water, people without food. It's an extraordinary situation. Then you layer on top of that the pandemic, the virus infections, and then you try to get vaccine to these people. Logistically, it's bad enough without freezing weather, lack of electricity, lack of water. And the good news is now that I just saw a report from Pfizer and BioNTech saying that their vaccine doesn't have to be as frozen as we originally thought. It can be administered with regular refrigeration as a storage facility. So that'll help distribution of the vaccine in states like Texas, where the power grid is down. So this is a catastrophe. It's sort of like the locusts, the plague, and everything wrapped into one. And I feel for the Texans, the people of Texas. It's a bad situation.
But Doctor, it's not just Texas. It's sort of a huge swath of this country is being hit with this terrible winter weather. That is certainly messing up transportation, and that means, vaccine distribution is slowing down. Some places are having to reschedule, and there's a concern that if you already got your first dose, if you get your second dose appointment canceled, how far can you push it? The CDC put out some guidelines saying that, you have up to 6 weeks to get that second dose. I want to get your take on it. What is happening in, the time between your first dose and your second dose? It went from 4 weeks to 6 weeks is okay, but in those last couple of weeks, are you running the risk of, the first dose losing its potency?
No. Anne Marie, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's been a popular question my patients and every other doctor's patients ask. First of all, the immune system doesn't have a stop clock, okay? So it doesn't know when you get the second dose. Pfizer has just announced that the first dose is good enough to protect people both from transmission and from getting severe disease themselves. 95% efficacy, which is incredible. So if you get the shot at 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or even 8 weeks, it's not going to make a difference because remember, the second shot is a booster. Your immune system is already torqued up and it already both cellularly and antibody-wise knows that you have the spike protein in you and it's going to respond robustly. The second shot is a booster and that's just going to make things even better. But it's not necessary to get that on a tight schedule. So all these people who are very, very anxious and wringing their hands because they're worried that, oh my gosh, I didn't get the second shot within 28 days, what's going to happen? That should not be a worry. Strike that from your brain. Just go and get your second shot when it's available. And it can be, as I said, 8 weeks. And I heard some reports from some of the scientists that I know that said even up to 12 weeks. The second shot will do wonders. It'll be a great booster. And of course, I told you, Pfizer just said that, the first shot gives you 95% protection already. So this is a wonderful thing to hear. And everybody should be calm about it and not get bent out of shape.
Dr. Bob, before we let you go really briefly here, a question about the fact that, I saw some images yesterday right here in New York City of the Javits Center where vaccines are available for people who are in the profile. It was not crowded. There were not people, around the block lining up for these vaccines. So the question is, this is a bioethics question. There are a number of organizations that are offering to put people like myself, like Anne Marie, on a waiting list to jump into the line if there are available vaccines. Where do you stand on that?
I stand on the fact that we should be giving after the 1A group with the elderly, those with comorbidities, and the healthcare workers. I think we should start giving it to everybody. I really do. And I think that Dr. Fauci has said that he wants everybody vaccinated by the end of July and certainly by August. And I think if you have extra doses and no one's in line, go for it. Because, again, this is a public health thing. And the more people that are vaccinated, this is what should stand in our heads, Vlad, that the more people that are vaccinated in short time will result in herd immunity being achieved much earlier. And we want to get that herd immunity out there by October, November, so that over 70% of our population is immunized.
All right. Good advice. Dr. Bob Lahita, have a wonderful weekend, sir. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.